I'll probably just pop on a couple of more short times before the reveal, but I wanted to say one more thing. The sides are going to have less distressing because the sides would have had less use. Maybe a little more here or here where they would have picked it up from, or you know, maybe a little bit on the edges here. And this is a straight leg, so I may get a little bit of the back. But the thing with this paint, it's thick and clay based, is there's a lot of texture to it already with the brush strokes. So I want to get the brush strokes smooth, and I'm using a little sanding disc now, and I'm starting out in a circular motion, but I'm just trying to smooth out for the majority of this. I mean, we're gonna go down and show a little bit of the undercolors here and there, but for the majority of these sides and these back legs, we're just going to smooth out the brush strokes. That's the main thing. I've got a big lump of paint or something right there. Of course, I'm going to want to knock that off and, you know, straighten around these legs a little bit on these portions. But on the larger pieces of the sides and of the back, of course, which will probably never be seen, but you still want to finish, all I'm going to do is work the edges to distress those a little bit back there and just work to remove those brush strokes. That'll be the only thing we're working on these other pieces, and then I'm going to put big top on them, and then I'm going to wax over that. I've used my sanding block and got this smooth now, and you know, removed the majority of the brush strokes and all that, going in the direction of the brush strokes. But to do the part where we're gonna distress a little bit around those edges, we can go back to our green scrubby, dip down in our water and wet distress. It's gonna be a whole lot quicker and a good opportunity to practice with your wet distressing. So I'm just wetting the tip and going down in the areas where I may want a little more of the undercolors to be exposed. And getting the water on first to soften up the paint. I'm going to do this on both outer edges of the leg. I already have that sanded. Definitely on this bottom part. A little more where I had that lump. I sanded and sanded and sanded on it, but it was still there. So see how easy that is removing with the wet. So let's get a little more of these edges exposed. Dip. I'm not wanting it soaking wet because I don't want it to run. That's not the finish for this. But now I'm gonna back and forth over it the way I was sanding. Not really wanting to go in a circular motion on it, but let's get deep down in those crevices so that the crevices show a little more. And then this will dry in a minute. All these parts that have sort of ran out onto my piece here, I'm showing you a little more of that now. You go back in my brush stroke direction on this. I went horizontally on this part. That'll dry, and that's not going to be a big deal. As long as I have went through there, I'm going to switch over to the dry side of that and done a good scrub near where I want it to show. Then get back in the direction so your, you know, scrub marks aren't still there. Because once this is dry, which will just be a few minutes, I'll dust back over it with that regular sanding block. Get these legs here a little bit better. I'll dust back over it or hit the high points with that sanding block, and this baby will be done as far as the sanding part. So I just wanted to get around I got the front, and this, you know, leg is basically done. There's a few lumpy areas right here around the round parts where a lot of the paint clumped up. So I'm gonna erase some of that with the water. It wouldn't be as worn on the inside, so I'm gonna stop there. You can just use, if you think some's gonna run or anything, just use a piece of your shop towel and wipe it off. And that's plenty. Let me get, what I didn't do was, and this is all the way in there now, is come back over and make sure that my strokes were horizontal where they needed to be horizontal and vertical where I wanted them vertical. And that's really all. That's really all that's all she wrote on this. Okay, we're to the time to put on the other portion of the top coat. I'm going to use DIY Big Top, and I'm going to do both sides, all 4 legs, and the back, and not that other little panel in front. But the reason I'm doing this now is I have the other little panel in front where I put the black wax on accidentally first on that one, so I'm going to do the other side to match it. And then while I have the black wax out, I'll come with the clear wax on all the rest of it over the top coat, so it won't sink in as much. These will be the darkest panels of all, but these will still match and blend in. But I'm going to go ahead and put the Big Top on first, so the waxing will be easier. And this is the first end I sanded, so this is the first end I'm going to put the Big Top on because it's the driest. And I'm going to stir it rather than shake it because I don't want any bubbles in it. And look, there is some clunky thick stuff there on the end, so you know that it does settle. And some people kind of swish theirs back and forth. Some people may shake it. I don't know. I've always heard don't shake it because you don't want the bubbles in it, but it does have something that's not pigments, but it has something in it that sinks to the bottom, and I want to make sure that whatever I need to give my piece a good finished top coat is there. While I have this out, well, there must be a little bit on it. I'm making sure that there's no more dust or anything left on these pieces or on this end that I'm about to do. And then I'm just going to use my favorite little handled brush. This is the Dixie Belle Mini, and put a thin coat on. And same thing about the brush strokes. Let's remember to get this underneath part. Same thing with your brush strokes, going in the same direction as your paint went originally. Even though we were sanding and doing our best to sand off any brush strokes, it's still a good idea to stay in that same direction you were going in the beginning. I'm putting on a thin coat, and a thin coat is all it needs. That's gonna finish this paint so that it doesn't reactivate if water ever hits it, and it's gonna give it a slick enough of a surface to hold my wax. That's all I'm wanting it to do, is protect it in the long run and give me an easygoing time on the wax. Working on those brush strokes. Even though this dries clear, if we leave thick areas and brush strokes on there, they will show later on. So we're going to work on that. Make sure none got around the edge. I'm wanting to make sure to get, you know, these corners where our wet distressed, and any areas where there may be just a tad of the wood exposed. I want those protected too. And now my famous, you know, I'm gonna lay down because I can't see it any other way, and get the back side of this leg. You can see this paint. See here, I think you can see that part there. You can see the color coming back to it, and see it coming back to life as the top coat not necessarily activates the paint in the way that water does to make it even though, you know, some of the tip of my brush is teal from this, but it sort of reawakens the color that was in it when we painted it on. Remember, this was the first one we did, and the complete finish on that is wax, no top coat. And it took too much time, made the cost of our piece go up because of the additional labor. So that's why we're top coating the rest before we wax. Save ourselves probably 45 minutes in the long run. Okay. So that's all there is to the top coat process. This will be dry to the touch within about 30 minutes. I'm gonna you know, do the whole rest of the parts that I'm going to do with that, and then come back once again and put the wax over it. But I'm going to give it at least 2 or 3 hours to get good and dry before I start applying the wax, because I don't want a chance rubbing too hard. A piece of this have activated some of the clay underneath there, and my rubbing with the wax to smudge that underneath and ruin the finish, because that could possibly happen. It hasn't happened to me, but I can see where it could happen. So hope that helps.